Zapplink projection painting. In this clip, we're going to utilize some projection painting methods. But before we do that, I'm going to do a few more painting details, a few adjustments to our textures here. I have this light blue color selected and this paintbrush. I'm just going to go ahead and add a layer to this set of petals on this subtool, and also have use tablet or my pressure sensitivity turned off. Next, I'm just going to mask off this petal, zoom in a bit, and much like the leg leaves, I'm just going to go ahead and add a trim to the petals like so, just keeping it loose. And since we have this on a layer, I'll simply have to hold Alt and paint to erase, which is by far the most useful use of the layers in ZBrush. Ability to stack or layer things up and erase them in a way, because there is no erase brush or eraser in ZBrush yet. And I'm just going to go ahead and demo this on this petal. We'll go ahead and do another, just so we can get the method down here. You can even work from the underside, since we're just working on a one-sided piece of geometry here, or a thin piece I should say. And I'm just going to go ahead and pretty much do the same here. And this is another kind of optional thing if you're following along with the course here. Felt that the petals could use a bit more pop out, a bit more edge to kind of accentuate her face or frame it. So go ahead and add this like so, and we can stop there, or you can continue to hide petals as you want and continue the trim here. Just gonna clear my mask and see how things look here. Alright, so I'm just gonna go ahead and continue this and resume when we return here. Alright, here are our results with the trimming added. Looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the hair and add a similar highlight. I'm just going to add a layer, and next with the same blue color and this paintbrush, I'm just going to go ahead and drag out a stroke and undo that and make some edits to my brush, lowering my focal shift to get harder edges. Next, I'm going to open my brush options, and in the tablet pressure area, I'm going to open the curve for RGB and just max it out. And far as my pressure sensitivity, I'm just going to slightly tweak the low end. So now when we make a stroke, I won't have any values of RGB. I'll keep a solid color, as well as my pressure sensitivity controlling the size of my brush, like so. So now with that set, I'm going to go ahead and grab the color I want, and that test stroke like so. Alright, now with our brush set up, I'm just going to go ahead and mask off this single hair strand here, so I can work without worrying about stroking other hair strands here. And I'm just going to slowly follow this curve here, like so, and just kind of add highlights here and there as I see fit. Just going to zoom in a bit and do a bit of cleanup here, holding the Alt brush. And earlier I set my lazy mouse to something nice and smooth, so I can maintain nice smooth lines. Okay, something much like that. So now I can go ahead and select another hair strand, line up my camera for making a nice single stroke, and go ahead and trace another one of these curves here, like so. You don't have to trace the curves, you can put them wherever you like, but it does kind of make sure you follow the path and direction of the hair as it is. So once again, I'm starting with a light pressure, and as I come down to the base, I'm applying a bit more pressure to make the line thicker. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a few more of these and return for the next step. Okay, now with all that done, you can see the results here. And if you want, you can go into the layers palette and lower the intensity of this color, say a 0.5, and we'll get something a bit less extreme. I'm going to go ahead and set ours for a 0.5, and you can see the results here. Alright, I think we'll keep that. Moving on now to the tail, we're going to use layers again. Just going to line things up in the camera here, like so. Kind of work a little zoomed out here. Add a layer, and I would go ahead and simply work isolating the tail like so, but I get this weird artifact like this. Not sure what that is, so I'm just going to bring everything back and work like so. So if you have a weird result like that, just work, in the standard view like I am. So that's the color I want to use here. Just undo that and pick something a little bit darker so we can see these details at a distance. Yeah, that'll work. Don't want anything too dark or too light. I'm just going to add in a speckle kind of texture similar to what we've been adding in several places throughout the character. I felt the tail needed a little bit of something. It was a little too plain in this area. So I went with this little hand texture. Sort of reminds me of the dots on the Yoshi eggs from Super Mario. And I'm just going to continue to randomly add these dots in varying sizes all the way down the tail here. Just trying to change up the placement and scale, as well as kind of lower the dot intensity as we work our way down to the tip. I want it to kind of fade in a sense here. Alright, I think I'll go ahead and start from the bottom actually and work our way up to where we left off. It's another way of approaching this. In the next section, we will utilize a feature called Zapplink, which will take a still shot of our subtool on screen and send it to whatever app you have of choice. In our case, we'll be using Photoshop, and allow us to do some texturing to project back into ZBrush. So just wrap up this tail and go ahead and move on to that. Okay. So in order to use the Zapplink, we have to make sure if our subtool has any layers that we go ahead and turn that off, or it won't work appropriately. So just turn off the visibility like so, and we'll be projecting this texture straight onto the subtool. So in Document, all the way at the bottom, there's a Zapplink button. If you click the Set Target app, you can choose the application you want to send it to. Mine is already set up for Photoshop. Make sure you have Fade and Enable Perspective turned off and click Drop Now. Okay, here in Photoshop, we have a 3-layer setup that the app sets up for us. Let's start with the shading at the bottom, the color in the middle, and another shading up top. The only one that matters is the one in the middle, layer 1. We can add layers, but before we finish, we need to make sure we merge anything we do to layer 1. I just went ahead and dragged in this lotus design from your project files. Next, I'm going to go ahead and rasterize it. And next I'm going to use the magic wand to select the white portion of the design. Go to select and click inverse to delete the black portion, like so. So next I'm going to click Control T to bring up my transform and just center it on the hair. And next I'm going to set the layer blend mode to overlay to get the desired look I have in mind, like so. And next I'll just lower the opacity just a bit, just to get something a little bit more subtle, like that. And don't worry about the areas that are on the face or elsewhere other than the hair, as it'll just project on our hair subtool. So next I'm going to go ahead and merge down, and I'll get an option to preserve the layer masking, which you need to do. Next, save as, keep the same name and location. Once done, hop over back into ZBrush and you'll get a dialog asking you to re-enter ZBrush. Just click that and you'll see your projection, and then click pick up now. And this is our result. Let's go ahead and hide our other subtools here just to see the hair part. And you'll see we did get a bit of artifacting from the other subtools. Hindsight, you might want to hide the other subtools, but we can also just clean it up later. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. Here I went ahead and added a purple trimming to this particular subtool and went ahead and cleaned things up a little bit. Most of what we've covered in the previous clips here. Just doing a little bit of touching up here. And we're going to go ahead and perform another projection on this subtool once we're done cleaning up this edge here. Just going to zoom out, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the layer that I put that painting on in order to use the Zapplink. Get it nice and centered in my viewport. Go to the Zapplink button at the bottom here. Now with the same settings on screen, click drop now, and over in Photoshop with a Zapplink project already open, just click update to change to our current project. I've noticed that we're taking up very little space on the screen here, so I'm going to actually hop back into ZBrush, click OK unchanged, and what I want to do is go up to document and navigate down to zoom out, so I can see the full area, and just enlarge the size of our subtool on screen to take up more space for use in Photoshop. Turn off fade and drop now. Back inside Photoshop, we're going to click update on our Zapplink file, and now we're taking up much more space in that texture area there. Next, I'm going to drag in another texture from your project files. This is a shell pattern. I'm just going to scale it up like so to take up most of the area here, and just kind of center it. I'm going to go ahead and right click and select rasterize layer. Next, I'm just going to use my magic wand to select the black part and then inverse it to select the white. Alternatively, you could have just selected the white area. Next, I'm going to set my layer blending to overlay, and then lower my opacity to get the desired look I have in mind, like so. I'm going to zoom in a bit and go to image. I'm going to go ahead and click actually edit and transform. Actually go back to edit and click transform and click scale, like so. Now bring up the transform like we had before. And I'm just going to center this on the subtool like so. And now is a good time to make sure we have the scaling we want, and just click the check mark to accept. Moving on here, I'm just going to go ahead and nudge using my arrow keys on my keyboard, just slightly moving it upwards. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and right click on the layer and click merge down and click preserve to preserve the masking, which you need to apply it in ZBrush. So now we're pretty much happy with this. We're going to go ahead and save as, keep the same name and location, and overwrite the file. Next, let's go ahead and head back over into ZBrush and click yes or re-enter ZBrush. You'll see our projection and click pick up now to go ahead and accept that onto the subtool. Now we can turn our layer back on and see what everything looks like together. And keep in mind, the projection is dependent on your texture density or your polygon density. So if you don't have a lot of geometry, you won't get the best resolution translation. So just something to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and move on. Now we're going to do a bit of texturing on the cloth here. I'm going to go into my brushes. I'm going to go ahead and find the Stitch Basic brush. In the options here, I'm going to go ahead and turn off Z Add, keeping just the color on. Next, I'm going to test out the stroke with this kind of navy color here. Get the right brush size and just go ahead and trace the profile of this edge here, making sure I have symmetry on so I can work on both sides at the same time. And I'm going to do the other side as well. And really taking advantage of that lazy mouse to help me keep things kind of smooth and follow that curve there all the way down like so. So now we got that little stitching in. Let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to go to document and I'm going to zoom out like we did before. And next I'm going to scale up my subtool to maximize the space for texturing in Photoshop. Keep in mind, you can set ZBrush to or Zapplink to go wherever you want, any program or 2D editing program. Click drop now to go over into Photoshop. And since we have an Zapplink file open, we'll click update and it'll update our file here. I'm going to drag in some textures from your project files. First one I'll bring in here is this sort of heart shape design here, which is actually an African symbol that roughly translates to Mother Earth. I'm just getting rid of the black part of it. And next I'm going to go and transform inside the edit menu and just scale it down. And then center it in the area I want, somewhere about here. Okay. So next I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this by dragging the layer down to the new layer button here, and that'll go ahead and duplicate that. And I'll just simply click my transforms and hold shift to slide it over. Keep in mind the transform hotkey is Control T by default. I just went ahead and merged those two layers together and set their blend mode to overlay and lower the opacity just a bit. You can use whatever blend mode you like. I just tend to fancy overlay. Next I'll bring in the stained texture paper texture from your project files. I'll just drag that into our Photoshop document here. And with my transform selected, I'm just going to scale it up nice and large to fill the area. Enter to accept. And next I'm going to go to image, adjustment. I'm going to navigate to hue and saturation. I'm going to go to saturation and drag it all the way to the left to remove all the color. Next I'll go ahead and right click and rasterize the layer. And now what I want to do is go ahead and use my transform and move it over to the left over one side of the cloth and set my blend mode to overlay. Okay. can start to see some of that stain texture show up. And I'm just going to lower my opacity just a little bit. Next, I'm going to go up and perform some edits in image, adjustment, and I'm going to go to levels. And here we can drag these sliders around to change the desired look of our texture here. I'm going to grab the middle one here and move it to the right. I suggest a bit of experimentation if you're new to messing with levels. And just click OK. I'll play around with the opacity again, just trying to get the most out of it, trying to get a nice subtle texture look. I want something that looks like it has a bit of history here. Next, I drug the layer down to the plus new layer icon and duplicated it and moved it over to the right. And I'm offsetting it from the texture we have on the left so I can get a whole different look of texture here. Okay. So now with that placed, I'm going to go ahead and merge these layers together and then merge it with the symbols and then merge it with the layer 1 and click preserve. So now with that done, let's go ahead and save as. Keep the same name and location. Override the file. Back in ZBrush, we're going to click re-enter ZBrush to project our texture and then click pick up now. And once that's all done, we can navigate all the way around and zoom in and see how things worked. It's looking good. We got that texture there and our symbol. But that does conclude this clip. I will see you in the next.